Maybe we restart.
No, we're
Oh, sorry. I heard the music going.
It's good now. Yeah.
Wow, this is I am not on my game today.
What is the? You don't need to be on your game when it's a casual.
You're right.
Next episode.
I'm thinking too seriously. You're right. Casual Couch Critics, episode number 3.
Twa.
We're back. Music is still a banger.
Oh yeah.
We survived the week after doing power rankings of Disney Hall of Fame.
Yeah, 20 views on last week's episode.
Yeah, and they are now released Podbean and Apple Podcasts, I believe.
Dude, we are expanding.
We're expanding. We're going to continue to expand. That's what the people want. Welcome everybody to the Casual Couch Critics, episode 3. My name is Jarrett. I have no movie expertise whatsoever, but I enjoy watching them. With my co-host, as always, Zach. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I am looking forward to talking about some movies today, talking about what's going on in the world of movies. And yeah, dude, I'm loving that, we're 3 episodes in. This is becoming kind of a weekly thing, and I'm looking forward to it each and every week.
Any regrets over the Hall of Fame last week?
None. You?
It's because you got your Treasure Planet in there.
Yeah, really, that was my goal. Like, Treasure Planet made the Hall of Fame, so.
You saw Wish. Would you put Wish in there since that?
No. Okay, I did see Wish since then, and it's not. No. I'm okay that we left Wish out of the Hall of Fame.
Well, congratulations again to those inductees to the first Casual Couch Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Big deal.
Disney does realize that. Well, anyway, we got definitely a smaller scale show compared to the impact and achievement that we were doing last week with all the Disney animated movies, but still lots to talk about. It's beginning of December. A lot of movies still coming out this month before the long drawn out January and February that it sometimes feels like at the movies. And so we'll dive right in. Those who listen to the first episode know we originally called this section Coming Soon, but then we didn't actually preview. I guess we did Karate Kid Multiverse.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be previewing anything too much today, so it's bonus features.
Bonus features?
We're doing them first, so it's not even like at the end. Like
we're like an old school DVD.
We are. I miss those. Those. And the main thing I want to talk about, and it's kind of gotten traction that I've seen around the internet, is the movie musicals, specifically Wonka, which is coming out this coming week, starring Timothy Chalamet as a young Willy Wonka, a William Wonka, if you will. Turns out that movie's a musical, and I don't think that's completely unexpected, knowing that the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movies had songs and there was dancing, and it was, a bit charming in that way. But none of the trailers have really shown that.
Yeah.
None of the marketing has promoted that. And later, I think around Christmas time, The Color Purple is coming out. That's being remade, Steven Spielberg's movie, and that hasn't really been marketed as much of a musical. And so, I guess what it comes down to, what I want to talk about with you, Zach, is: are we afraid of, like, as a Hollywood industry, to market movies as musicals now? Like, kind of what's the hesitation there, do you think?
That's a really great question. I don't know. So when you told me it's going to be a musical, and I've watched the trailers for it, I knew about this movie for, I think, probably about a year and a half. I've known about this movie's coming out. And when you told me it's going to be a musical, I was like, oh, really? Didn't see that in any of the marketing whatsoever. But like, it makes sense, as you say. The original was a musical. I, I, I think maybe there is this thing in Hollywood of like, if people know it's a musical, they'll assume it's the story sucks, and like unless the music's good, they're not going to come out to it. And maybe there's like this thing of like we want people to come out to it and then gain traction. Because think of like The Greatest Showman, right?
Yep.
Had a horrible opening box office, but then once people saw it, word of mouth just spread like crazy, and it actually ended up doing really well at the box office.
Yep.
Right? So like.
Yep.
Maybe that's part of it where people are like, they don't want to have people write it off as a musical, because there's some people that were like, oh, if it's a musical, I'm not going to go unless like I hear it's good or something. I don't know. But that's most people going to the movies nowadays anyway, for most movies.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. You bring up Greatest Showman, and I feel like that's kind of the last big box office hit in terms of movie theater goings for musicals. That was 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
But even if I just list some things off from the 2020s, so just the past, kind of 4 full years, 2020, obviously COVID, not a lot of stuff, but we got Eurovision, Will Ferrell, Netflix movie, McAdams. Again, it's a musical, but I don't know. It kind of is, kind of isn't. I guess it did promote itself, but as a direct-to-streaming movie, I guess is kind of what I wanted to say there. Hamilton, obviously ginormous, but the stage, it wasn't actually a movie, it was a stage recording, and again, wildly successful.
A very well done one, man.
Yeah, 2021, a West Side Story remake, again, really good, but it was a remake. Tick Tick Boom, which was pretty good.
That was a great movie, yeah.
But it was biographical of a Broadway person, so that was kind of expected. And 2022, I'm looking here, Disenchanted, that sequel, that was directed Disney Plus. 2 Pinocchio movies last year, people forget. The Spirited musical, the Christmas musical with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. And all in between there, I should say, we got like lots of biopics of popular musicians. Like we had Bohemian Rhapsody with that one probably being the most notable for Rami Malek winning the Oscar. We had the Rocket Man Elton John one.
Yep.
We got there's a Weird Al one, Whitney Houston one. Like there's always those ones, right? Yeah. And it seems to me when I look like this year, really the only other musical was The Little Mermaid. And I'm not really including all the we mentioned the Pinocchios, but like all these Disney remakes, what you're kind of going.
Yeah.
Like so it seems to me like there's 3 categories of movie. One is a biographical story of a musical artist, so you're going to get songs. 2 is a remake of a Disney movie, and so you're going to get songs. And the 3rd is a Broadway adaptation, so you're going to get songs. But then Wonka kind of falls in this weird space where it's an original kind of musical, and I can't think of like we were all like all those things I listed. The original ones, Eurovision, Spirited, I can't really see anyone else that's coming to the top of my head, but those were direct to streaming. Right? Less risk there.
Yeah, Jarrett, you were able, hearing you kind of go through that brought me up. I think with this movie, this is an intentional marketing, strategy of okay, this is a musical, but we want people to focus on the story. We want people to know this movie is the story about Willy Wonka, or William Wonka, if you will, before Bill, Bill, if someone calls him Bill, the movie, before like Charlie, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting. And the one musical you didn't bring up that was a box office bomb, and you wonder if that like has made studios nervous, is Cats.
Oh yeah, no,
Right?
that
Like
wasn't even on. I don't even know.
horrifying.
Was that on the list I had? Maybe I just wiped that completely
And
from. And
rightfully so. And maybe that's why studios are like, oh, we don't want another Cats
well, that
fiasco.
was a Broadway adaptation too, though. I feel like, I mean, it's a very good point from you, but I mean, if people want, if the purpose of the story, again, we haven't seen the movie yet. It's coming out this week. I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. Um, if it is just a full blown musical, then that's going to be more confusing,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like it's gotten pretty good critical response so far. I think it was hovering around 75-80% Rotten Tomatoes. Not that we're a pro Rotten Tomatoes show. We haven't really gotten deep into that, you and I, so far. But I mean, general consensus is that people like the movie prior to its release. We'll see how audiences kind of respond to it. I know just talking with close friends like yourself and others, bit of hesitation on is this gonna be good? I'm not like obviously you can see the production value. It visually looks great,
You see,
but
like I wouldn't say the trailer has blown me away.
no. But maybe it's part of that is because musicals are similar to action movies in the sense that they're built around big set pieces.
Mm,
And if you're gonna hide that,
yeah.
it's gonna be hard to kind of sell. Like Mission Impossible, you see what Tom Cruise is gonna do in the trailer, or
Yeah.
like the preview of him going up the cliff. You don't know what's gonna happen, but usually for musicals, you get previews of these big set pieces where people, are line kicking or dancing kind of thing, but and it's a bit of more of a celebration. So anyway, it's intriguing because I also think if we just look at this past week's box office too, it's a reflection. This year has completely revolutionized a fourth category. It's probably an extension of a movie musical rather than an actual category of it, but just film concerts being popular again. Beyonce's movie Renaissance won the box office this past week in its debut. We know all about Taylor Swift's
Who?
movie from a few months ago. Um, and so, yeah, concert movies are back. And so it's almost like the next evolution because we went through for like the past 4 or 5 years a heavy musical artist biopic phase in Hollywood. And it's still even happening now. I think we're trickling down to the end, and kind of these concert movies are rising from that just that saturation of biopics. All right, let's actually have the real artists themselves just record their concert and we'll play it. Not that that's a bad thing. I definitely enjoy concert movies. They're definitely a thing of the past, but it's interesting to see the big resurgence and popularity of them, especially in context with this like not promoting movies as musicals kind of idea on the other end of things. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think in terms of like the concert movies, just like, and I haven't seen Beyonce's or Taylor Swift's concert movie, but like, well, I just am neutral. I'm not the target audience, but like, I think they like modern day technology and like filming tactics for a stadium concert tour has advanced a lot, right? And so I think they'd be foolish not to make a concert movie out of their the successful tours, right?
Yeah.
So that they can get it to as many people as possible. That being said, back to musicals. I don't know if I'm ready to say we're in a musical resurgence or renaissance, but I think studios are making these movies because they know there is a market for it, and
Yeah.
the reality is a lot of movie going, like the movie going audience has still not returned to cinemas as it was back in 2019, which was a record setting year
Yeah.
for the film industry, right?
Yeah.
And so if they can get all these different genres to, let people know, like, hey, there's a movie for you, come on out to the theater, grab some popcorn, have a good time. And whether that's an action flick or a movie or musical, there's something for you. So like, I think it's good, and I'm hoping that this new Wonka movie is great. I'm hoping that it's fun. I hope that it encourages people to have a big imagination, because
Yeah.
in general, I think that's a message that our world can use right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think my family. I grew up in a family that loves musicals, and I think they are events similar to action movies. And the past few years, as you said, maybe we've just kind of pivoted to just putting them on streaming. But especially around the holidays, like a successful musical's a great kind of winter thing, right? Usually there's like one kind of fantasy movie, there's one animated movie, drama, and a musical that comes out usually around this time of year. And yeah, I think it has the framework to be successful, but I hope maybe depending on how its success does this weekend, maybe they'll start pushing, on the commercials, like, hey, this is an actual event kind of thing, because that seems to be uh, what's bringing people into the movies, which leads us, I think, a good transition to our feature presentation this week. And no, there's no Hall of Fame, but maybe there should be.
Well, that was last week's episode. Was all people can go watch that.
Yeah, but maybe we need to make like a day, because this past week it's been all Godzilla.
Yeah,
Everywhere. Godzilla Minus One has completely taken over. Now, obviously, I said Beyonce won the box office. However, and even Hunger Games is still rolling. It barely passed Godzilla Minus One for number two, but for a Japanese-made film with a limited release in North America, this movie's doing phenomenal, and it's just expanded its release. Unfortunately, I can't say I've seen it yet, but it just because of its widening of showings, my theater is getting it this week, so I'm pretty excited about that. But Godzilla Minus One, crazy that it's bringing in people. What are your thoughts kind of on all the Godzilla hype? I know you're a big Godzilla guy.
Yeah, so I'll anyone who's watching, listening, I was introduced to Godzilla through the 1998 movie, which I know it's bad. Okay, I know it. The cartoon series was awesome. That was the sequel to that was great, but the actual movie was not that good. However, that encouraged me to go check out older Godzilla movies, and then I'm really digging the new MonsterVerse movies. I loved Godzilla versus Kong. And I'm so excited. I know we're going to talk later about Godzilla times Kong or Godzilla X Kong, whatever you want to call it. But Godzilla Minus One, I'd love to go see it. It's not in any theaters close to where I live. But once it gets to streaming, I'm definitely going to get it like the first day it comes out. And from what I've heard about this movie, I love that it's a different Godzilla story. It's not your typical one. It's something where you can really apparently fall in love and cheer for the human character is in it. And like I had one friend who saw it, and he told me, he's like, I was cheering for Godzilla at the start of the movie, but at the end, like by the end of the movie, I was cheering for the humans, and like Godzilla was like the villain. And so like I'm so interested to see about that, because at the end of the day, like Godzilla is a big, muscular, massive force of nature that can, disrupt an entire city whenever he shows up. So I'm excited about it. I'm love that this movie's doing well. I think it shows people that there's great cinema outside of Hollywood to experience, and there's talented filmmakers all over the world, and I love that this movie is doing well.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Just the past 10 years, if you said, we're kickstarting off this MonsterVerse, which we'll get into a little bit later, but Godzilla has kind of, I guess, more mainstream, become more of a popular figure because of that. And here we are with this, Japanese led and created Godzilla movie, returning to its roots, taking inspiration from the early on films. This was directed by Takashi Yamazaki, and dealing with when we talk about Godzilla, we learn about him as a kid. Usually there's the Lego blocks and kids are running around smashing them over, similar to like when we first learned about King Kong as young children. But we know when we ask where did Godzilla come from, it's like, well, during the war, a bomb got dropped on him, and he or she. Okay, don't come at me. I guess it might vary. I feel like I don't know. I'm not even gonna get into this debate. I'm moving forward.
The 98 movie, it's a she.
Yeah. In Godzilla Minus One, returning to the origin story, but more of like where Godzilla started, which was, as you said, like it's a monster, like it's destroying things, and a criticism of the MonsterVerse has been the focus on the humanity rather than the monsters, and it's interesting that this is kind of flipped and focus on the humanity around the monster, and it's proven successful. While at the same time, the MonsterVerse is still going on. We'll get into the Godzilla Kong New Empire thing in a little bit. We'll get into Monarch, that show that's going on right now, in a little bit. But these things are like Monarch is actively being released right now by Apple, and I'm sure this wasn't a surprise to know this movie was coming out. It's a popular IP, but not only to have it be its own story, but kind of the opposite, the inverse of what we're seeing. I think that's pretty cool, and it kind of shows how the MonsterVerse version of Godzilla and Godzilla Minus One are its own thing, and there's not as much confusion because of how they made this movie.
Well, and to their credit, I don't know what's like is Monarch. I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited to binge it over the holidays. But like, is it part of the MonsterVerse? Is it
Yeah.
It's in it? Oh, that's really cool. Because like, it's cool that they planned it out to like, okay, we know this Godzilla Minus One thing is coming out. Monarch's going to come out, and it's almost like the hype building for those will carry over to when Godzilla X Kong comes out in 2024, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, and maybe a part of the hype is that it's a Japanese-made movie for an original Japanese IP kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see if, like, for instance, I guess how I could relate it to for us in Western North America and Hollywood is like if Sony just made its own Spider-Man and Marvel made its own Spider-Man at the same time.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't be promoting each other. And even now you see like, okay, Sony has rights to some characters and they're trying to make as much money as they can off that to like, I mean, you can't blame them. Marvel has rights to their own Disney, I guess. And they kind of, there's definitely gaps in both because you can't have certain characters from the Sony universe and Marvel, and you can't have obviously the main hero, Spider-Man, for all these rogues gallery villains. And so, like you said, this seems to be like almost, wow, this is actually like really cool to see it again from a Japanese point of view in a World War II setting, because the past 10 years, what everyone's known from Godzilla or Kong in the MonsterVerse series has been modern day. Like if it happened today, what would it look like? And even, that terrible 1999 one that got you into it, that was still like modern day, right? So we're kind of shifting. It was almost like, I guess the 1999 one kind of had a bit of Jurassic Park 2 feel.
Yeah, there was a lot of inspiration, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And so like I just think that might be part of it. I don't know. Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it could be that like studios just were like, "Hey, Godzilla's a great character. They're fun movies. They're really fun movies."
Yep.
And I know there are some people that just they're like, "Oh, monster flicks, like that's not for me," right? But like, I don't know. There's something cool about just like, "Oh, a big monster showed up. Let's see what happens." And
Yep.
it's not necessarily super political, like in kind of a divisive culture that like anyone can go and watch a movie with a monster, right? And
Yep.
like all it needs is like ninjas and aliens to show up and maybe a musical number, and hey, you got
Yeah, there you go.
Godzilla the musical.
Yeah, I think also why this is getting a lot of hype, and deservedly so. And even though I've read a couple discrepancies, what we do know is it was made with a relatively low budget. Now, 15 million's number being thrown out. I think Yamazaki's come out and said no, it was more than that. But either way, definitely compared to our hundreds of millions of dollars, blockbusters that we're used to, the visual effects of this movie and just what they've been able to do with it, um, while not distracting or taking away from what's going on. Because let's be honest, when we see a movie, we're so accustomed now to CGI and visual effects in modern day blockbusters. As soon as something's off, we're like that takes you out for a moment. Whether you let it go by or it's like okay, but it's still like, oh yeah, I'm watching animation right now. And for a lower budget film to do that, it's very, very impressive. And I think it's going to get traction for best visual effects at the Oscars. I think maybe even Yamazaki might have a shot at a director's thing, but it's really just a great achievement all around. And I think it's gonna roll with this expansion kind of thing into more theaters due to its popularity. I don't see it slowing down.
And that's a win for practical effects, right? And I briefly looked up the budget for Godzilla Kong New Empire is over 200 million, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting, and obviously that's going to be a CGI, bloodbath, right?
Yep.
So it's interesting to see a movie like this with practical effects that are really well done, and I think there's an audience for that, right? Even look at like Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning had a lot of practical effects to it. If you go back, Tom Cruise movie Top Gun Maverick, a lot of practical effects in that. And there's something about like, hey, let's just return to really good special effects, practical, stunts, things like that. And it's cool to see in modern day Hollywood that it doesn't always have to be a big CGI splash on screen.
Yeah, it's impressive because the scale of Godzilla, right? It's no small feat to animate that or do anything visual effects wise with it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing it. The Godzilla hype's real. Why do you think audiences, now obviously in Godzilla Minus One, it's more of a villain type character, anti-hero maybe. Why do you think people are so invested in Godzilla, especially with, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla about 10 years ago now and moving in? What, like on the surface, a giant lizard eating things shouldn't really be, to me, it doesn't line up necessarily with what we know about modern day blockbusters today or action movies, but there's something that is drawing people in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it could be as simple as, Godzilla is just a recognizable name. Like Godzilla has been in the movies for longer than most people nowadays have been alive,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I think there's something to be said about that, because like say you and I created a new monster named Rorosaurus Rex, and it's like, oh man, this movie Rorosaurus Rex is coming out, and maybe we had the best trailer and everything. No one's gonna go see it, unless it was a good movie and stuff like that. But like, it's not gonna have the same weight as like Godzilla, right? And that like even I remember one of the thing in like the animated show from the early 2000s, they nicknamed Godzilla Zilla, and the main character would be like Zilla, and they like treated it like a dog, and people hated it, right? They're like, it's not Zilla for sure, it's Godzilla.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think, and now I am not, I have not seen all 30 plus Godzilla movies. I'll say that. But I think what's unique about the MonsterVerse side is that Godzilla is definitely more of on humanity's side kind of thing. Like, oh, Godzilla, get the other Titans, save the day, while it's like an anti-hero, I guess, more so than a villainous character. And maybe that's why there's some more appreciation too. But I also think, like you said, the longevity of the franchise and kind of returning to its roots. I mean, we've seen it with with a lot of movies lately. Just nostalgia seems to be a hit.
Yeah.
And so by returning, like you said, a popular character for several decades back to its origins, why not?
And like, to Godzilla Minus One's credit as a film, a lot of modern day Godzilla movies are similar formula. Like Godzilla shows up, but then there's a different monster that shows up. Godzilla has to fight that monster. Maybe either Kong or Mothra like help him defeat that monster, and then he swims off in the ocean, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Where, like, okay, again, neither of us have seen Godzilla Minus One. I'm excited to see it when I can. But, like, it sounds like this is not that movie.
No. But, again, big week for Godzilla fans.
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla and Kong, the new Empire's trailer, also came out. We would be remiss if we didn't at least mention it in this Godzilla conversation. Well, we'll talk more about this movie in depth when the movie comes out in just a few months. But I mean, good timing on the trailer. As soon as Godzilla Minus One, I don't perceive it as trying to compete against, but it's like like you said, using that momentum. Let's promote it there. And I'm assuming it's Godzilla and Kong. I'm assuming that's what the X is. I mean, maybe Batman X Superman are going to show up like Dawn of Justice. I don't really get it. Like, I'm a big fan of that movie, I'll say right now, but the X thing in movie titles, I don't get. I'll say that.
Godzilla times Kong, and put like an equal sign, equals question mark. Like, I don't know, something with it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, I know you're a big fan. It's a continuation of this franchise. Again, different type of Godzilla that we're seeing in this series opposed to Minus One. Any initial thoughts you have from that and the Godzilla Minus One momentum?
So I love the trailer, watched it countless times this week. There was a rumor that it was going to drop last week, and it didn't. I was very disappointed. But then it came out this week, and I was pumped. And I forgot about my disappointment until this very moment. But that being said, I loved most of this trailer. Probably 90% of this trailer, I was like, okay, I'm hyped for this. this new threat arises that apparently wiped out, Kong's, species, or he's got this kind of apex predator vibe to him, and I love all that. I think there's a story here. I am optimistic the story in this one will be a little bit more in depth than Godzilla versus Kong. And I know it's controversial, the scene with Godzilla and Kong running together. And yes, Godzilla looks awkward. He looks awkward because we're not used to seeing him run in that fashion. However, that's canon. Like, that's on point. Like, Godzilla's not. I know a lot of the times they have him as this slow moving thing, but like, he's a muscular giant lizard who he's got wheels. Okay, like he can run.
Yep.
What concerns me about this is it's always the humans. It's always the humans. And Godzilla Minus One proved that like you can make a movie where the humans are actually on point. But like most of the MonsterVerse movies, the worst part is the human storyline.
Yeah.
And give us as much Godzilla and Kong together as possible. I love the fact that they don't actually talk English. Like, I know Kong knows sign language and stuff, but like Godzilla versus Kong, they're like scenes at the end of the movie where they're just sort of like looking at each other and grunting. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Like, give me more grunts, give me more dirty looks. I'm here for it. But yeah, I enjoyed the trailer, and I can't wait for this movie to come out next year.
Yeah, Adam Wingard's returning. He did Godzilla versus Kong, so I am skeptical in the sense that, in our CGI, practical effects, visual effects conversation, if we're going to Hollow Earth, which we knew kind of that was the next step, is going to be a lot.
Yeah,
and I'm curious how they're going to do that and where the franchise can go.
Yeah.
From this point, because I don't know how many more things we can do, but I do think, as a fan of the MonsterVerse, Godzilla King of the Monsters was definitely good, and I think a lot of the criticism was on the human elements of that, but I think there's almost too many monsters. I think we might have used up a bit too much IP in that movie.
See, that's the interesting thing, though, is Scar King, who's the villain, that's the name of the villain of this, is, to my understanding, like, he's not this, like, monster in the MonsterVerse that has, like, a lot of canon material behind him.
Yeah.
So, like, it's even cool they're taking a risk of, like, okay, we've come up with this new big baddie for Godzilla and Kong to team up with, or team up against.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll have to wait until April 12th is when that release date is. Still a few months away, but it's coming. It's coming.
How did you feel about Kong's mechanical hand? Like, it looks like he's got a brace or something on. Like,
I don't know how people can like criticize a mechanical hand, to be honest, in a movie about Godzilla and Kong. Like, I think we're being a bit nitpicky at that point. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm assuming something happens to his arm.
Yeah.
Humans have to help him. I feel like that's just the natural.
Which would make sense, yeah.
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 So like, I didn't have any grace with it. It was more like when I saw the discourse, I was like, this is what we're. Like, there's bigger things, guys. We're casual couch people.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like.
I'm excited to see, to be honest, that's probably one of the most interesting parts of the story from the trailer that I got. Is like, okay, like, what happened to Kong's hand? Why does he have to wear, like, does he need the brace, or is it like, hey, we're gonna equip him with a power glove or something?
Yeah, I mean,
or like, does Kong make it himself? Because we know he's smart, he's intelligent. Like, did he learn from studying Mechagodzilla how to make a mechanical hand? Like,
it's true. It's true. Wow. Well, we'll definitely come back to a more MonsterVerse-based discussion in a few months from now. But all in on the Godzilla hype train. Yeah. same kind of length of our first episode, not our mega Hall of Fame, but we appreciate everyone joining us this week on the Casual Couch Critics podcast. Well, we wish you have a good week and watch some movies, have some fun, and we'll be back here for episode 4.
Let's go. Like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, rate, YouTube, podcasts,
share,
all that stuff. Share, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. All right. Thanks, Zach, as always, and we'll see everyone later.